You're listening to Reignite, a podcast about trying to maintain balance. I'm MJ.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And this week we have a special guest, Zafar of Lore Party.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. I'm so happy that you're finally here.
Yes, this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, I always have this weird dysphoria a little bit when I have voices that I listen to all the time that I can't talk to now actually talking to me. Because a lot of Lore Party is very conversational, and so I always wish I could, the best podcasts are like that. They make you want to talk back even though you can't, and so it's always a little weird when a podcaster's on the show. I'm like, oh, I know this voice.
Right. Well, wow, you're making me feel like a celebrity already.
That's what I do.
You know, this is how I would react if somebody from, say, the Ringer Podcast Network tried to talk to me in person. I'd be like, I know your voice intimately, and I know so much about you, and I don't know what to say to you in real life now.
Well, for our listeners who are not quite familiar, can you tell us about Lore Party?
Yes, of course. So, my very lofty title is the creator and executive producer of the Lore Party Podcast Network. The network was launched about a year and a half ago at this point, and essentially what we are, I guess the elevator pitch for Lore Party, is that we are a group of podcasts that celebrate video game storytelling. We love video games, we love good stories, and we love to dissect them. So on Lore Party, we break down our favorite video game stories, the lore behind some of our favorite video games, and we really talk about how they have been meaningful to us in our lives, how games have affected us as we've grown up, and how those stories have stayed with us over many, many years and have in some ways been formative.
That's really awesome. What I love about the show is how in-depth that you all get, and that you have a rotating cast of hosts, and so it's not always the same voices, and you mix it up, you bring on guests. I think the first episode I heard was the one that MJ brought to my attention, which was Garrus's Space Batman, which I loved because, we all love Garrus. If you've played Mass Effect, you love Garrus. It's like a rule.
Right. I'm sure your listeners know very well how much MJ loves Garrus also.
Oh, yes.
They're regular
I love him
Reignite
so
listeners.
much. You may not know this, but now I have the body pillow.
Oh, what? That's amazing.
I have the body pillow.
Kind of jealous,
so
honestly. I want one too.
It's so snuggly.
But of course, as much as we love Lore Party, we're here to have you talk about Mass Effect, and you have talked about it on the podcast several times. But why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came to discover Mass Effect, how you first started playing it?
Well, I always tell this story about Mass Effect, and eventually I hope people will get sick of hearing it. But my journey with Mass Effect started back when I decided to buy the first Mass Effect instead of Halo 3 like all of my friends were. So I was in high school, and every single person I knew in high school, every single person that I gamed with in high school was gearing up to get Halo 3, right? It was the game. That was the game that everyone was going to play that fall. And I decided not to get it, and I got Mass Effect instead because I was just completely sold on the premise of Mass Effect. I'm a huge sci-fi geek. I was sold on the world. It was this perfect combination of Star Trek and Star Wars, and I just wanted to be in that world. And so I bought the first Mass Effect and fell in love ever since. And ever since I've been, I bought, to be totally transparent, I also bought Halo 3 very soon after because I was definitely left out of all of the game nights with my friends. But for the first couple of months after Mass Effect and Halo 3 launched, because I believe they both launched around the same time, I was a Mass Effect boy and not a Halo boy.
A good Mass Effect boy. But now I need to write a parody.
I have loved the franchise ever since, and it's been, and to this day still is, one of my all-time favorite trilogies of games, and one of my favorite universes to dive into time and time again.
So, what choices have you made in your ideal playthrough? Everybody knows what Matt and I have done.
Let's go with the broad strokes of the Mass Effect 1 choices. Like in your ideal playthrough, what were your choices in the first game?
So we need to remember that when I first played it, I was in high school. I'm a very different person now than I was in high school.
We all are.
But so the choices I made back then were killing Caden on Vermeer. That choice hasn't changed much. I think out of curiosity, I have a couple of playthroughs where I allowed Caden to live just because I wanted to see where his story ended up. But for the most part, I would allow him to die on Vermeer. And then when it comes to romance options, my original choice was like super vanilla, white girl, and it was Ashley. And that was my first romance option. But on subsequent playthroughs, it's always been Liara as far as romance options go. And then the final decision to either keep the council alive or allow them to die, I've gone back and forth, but I think my ideal is to... I'm very much a Paragon, and as much as I try to play Renegade, I find myself constantly leaning back towards Paragon decisions, so allowing the council to live is probably my ideal choice there.
One day we'll have a Renegade on this podcast.
Yeah, we really need one. There are some out there. They're later in our guest list, but there are some. Did you save or kill the Rachni Queen?
I believe the first time I played the game in high school, I killed the Rachni Queen because I was like, this is dangerous for the galaxy, and I can't allow this to happen, and I have to end this now. But I like to think my heart has grown since, and I think now my ideal playthrough is to allow the Rachni Queen to live. Which,
and you're more socially conscious.
In the sequels, like, really comes back to help you in some ways. So yeah, High School Abu thought very short term. generic white girl, kill the boring guy that I don't like, and kill this dangerous thing that is dangerous right now. Didn't have much long-term planning back then.
I mean, you also didn't know how the choices would have lasting effects back during that first game. None of us really did, so, that's legit.
Right, and that was something that was so revolutionary about Mass Effect 2 and 3, was the fact that your choices did carry over.
Yeah.
Like, I had never played a game that did that, a series of games that did that, and that was something that totally, on subsequent playthroughs through the trilogy, changed my outlook on a lot of decisions, because I knew this would not only have ramifications in the game I was playing now, but multiple games down the line.
Yeah, for sure. I think even other games that have similar things that kind of import some information, none of them have done it quite like Mass Effect, and it's definitely still why the second game is one of my favorite all-time games, is because of the heavy impact that all of those first decisions make on that second game, and just the scope of the second game as a whole.
Right.
Agreed.
We're actually going to see a small scale version of that on today's Thane discussion.
That's true.
Yes. Okay. Since we brought up Thane, let's get into the summary of the assassin. We return to Ilium to recruit our penultimate ally. Thane Krios is an assassin that is on Nos Astra to kill Nasana Dantius. If that name sounds familiar, it's because you may have encountered her on the Citadel in Mass Effect 1. Shepard gets a lift to Dantius Towers and fights their way up to the top, saving the Solarian Nightworkers who have been attacked by Eclipse mercs that guard Nasana from danger. Once we get to the top, Nasana believes Shepard is the assassin come to kill her. A figure drops from the ceiling to dispatch Nasana's closest guards, and then delivers the killing blow as he gently puts her to rest. Thane agrees to help after revealing that he's dying.
Well, I know we'll get to it, and so I'm not going to talk about that moment yet, but I have a lot to say about that final cutscene when you do first encounter Thane, because I think it does some interesting things that we haven't seen to this point. But, as usual, we should do our check-ins, as we always do, and talk about the crewmates that we spoke to before we went back out on the mission. I think it's interesting, MJ, that we're hitting this point in the playthrough where a lot of people don't have anything to say to us because we're essentially queuing up to head out on their
loyalty missions.
Those are the ones, the loyalty missions.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them have I don't have anything to say to you. What I do love about Kasumi, I'm jumping a little out of order, is that even though she's like Zaid, where she just says stuff to you when you prompt her, you can't really have a conversation. She does have new things to say every time you go to her for a while, and she makes quirky comments about the crew and stuff, which I kind of really enjoy.
Yeah, agree. That's why I listed her down, because I noticed that there were kind of new things. She mentioned how she knew Liara's reputation. She said that she heard how my shepherd and Liara were an item and how that must have been really awkward. It was like, yes, Kasumi, thank you for recognizing that. No one else knows my pain.
Yeah, she didn't say anything about a relationship to me because I am relationshipless.
Because you didn't have one.
I know.
I'm so salty. I did not consent to kissing Liara. I did not consent to this relationship. I am so mad. Everything makes me angry.
She does also mention Gabby and what's his name, Ken, and
Gabby
how they'd be
and
really
Ken.
cute couple if they ever realized it, which they probably won't.
I know. She's a bit of a romantic.
Yeah.
She has really interesting insight. So I am looking forward to hearing what else she has to say as we get down the line.
Let's go back to the top of the list, though. When we go to talk to Joker, I have a lot of favorite Joker moments when you go to the cockpit, but this is probably one of my favorites because it's my kind of humor, because it's just goofy, that you start to talk to Joker and Joker's chair just starts to move and turn away from you. And he's like, what? Hey, what the hell? And like, Shepard just deadpan goes, "You all right, Joker?" It's just the best, and it turns out that Edie is messing with his chair, which I just love that they're pretty much giving and getting at this point, the two of them. I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, this is one of the moments where their relationship is starting to develop into more than, I hate this thing, why is it on my ship?
Right, yeah.
And I can't...
What was that?
Oh, I was just going to say, I can't wait for us to see more of Edie's personality.
Yeah, same. Totally. I have some news on the Kelly front as we go to talk to Kelly.
Oh, yeah?
So, as listeners know, I've been aggressively flirting with Kelly at every opportunity because I think she's cute and it's fun and she's playful. But I flirted...
And she's a redhead.
And she's a redhead, and if anyone's met my spouse, they know I'm weak for redheads. But anyway, I flirted with her again after she talks to us about Samara, and then it gives you the options to say, "Oh, we should actually have dinner," and I chickened out. I couldn't do it.
No.
Yeah. I just said...
I'm so shocked.
I know. She said... Instead, I said, "Oh, hopefully once this is all behind us and it's all done, we'll get some downtime to really get to know each other." And she's like, "I'd like that." And then I walked away. It was like I froze up like high school me.
What was the thinking behind that? Yeah, why'd you freeze up?
Well, a part of it is the meta of I'm interested in other people on the ship, and I'm afraid that'll lock me out of it, which I can't remember or not. But
no, it doesn't.
yeah, and so that was part of it, and I wasn't going to look it up because I was playing in the moment. But also part of it was I did freeze up. I was like, "Oh God, does she think this is more serious than it is? Maybe I shouldn't offer dinner." Like, I am what you would call an awkward romantic in actual life, and
Yeah,
so
Matt Shepard is just as awkward as Matt Storm.
yeah, pretty much that's the gist. And so like I freaked out for a sec because I was like, "Oh God, wait, is this the relationship I want to pursue? Like I still have feelings for Caden, and I'm kind of interested in Jack. Like what do I do?" Yeah, and so I essentially shit the bed. So you're welcome, internet.
As someone who has dated you, this does not surprise me in the least.
Yeah, I figured it wouldn't.
That's so good.
How was your conversation with Kelly?
Very uneventful. Yeah. She let me know that Jack wanted to talk to me and that she describes Samara as cold, which I kind of understand, but I see her more as reserved.
Yeah.
Which isn't quite the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
and when we go to talk to Samara, you do get us like, first of all, the thing I love about talking to Samara is how she carries herself, the way she talks, like this kind of the way she holds herself up. It's just there's something to really admire and really attractive about that. And she's fairly open with you until you ask about who we're pursuing, and then she kind of goes, "Nope."
Yeah, which I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a personal topic, and it is none of my business. So I was just like, all right.
That's true. Shepard does kind of cavort around the ship, just assuming everyone's business is theirs.
Yeah, I kind of, from a meta standpoint and more from a design standpoint, when Shepard approaches Samara, they do not sit down.
No.
They, like, crouch awkwardly. And, like, why can't you just sit down?
Right.
Just sit down.
Like, what are you doing?
This is unnecessary. But yeah, I really love Samara. She is as you said, so open. She's genuinely interested in talking to you when you approach her. And she says, like, I haven't had a colleague to chat with in a very long time. I would like to talk, actually. Thanks.
Yeah, it's really interesting how interacting with Samara, I feel like, is unlike interacting with any other Asari in the game, in any of the games to this point, for a lot of different reasons. I mean, we talked about the over-sexualization in the last episode, but also, like, because of how Justicars live, it is very different from other Asaris we've encountered to that point, even matriarchs. And so it's really fascinating to me to find out more about her because, you know, it's just so out of the realm of understanding for a human, because there aren't human warriors like this. It's very different. You know, I'd equate it sort of to like the D&D paladin, but even still, like, I don't know if there's D&D in Mass Effect's world. I mean, I guess we can assume,
I mean,
but
there
who
is.
knows?
There definitely is. Fantasy GameStop definitely has.
Oh, that's true.
You can still trade in your holo discs for a shitty price.
That's true.
At Fantasy GameStop.
Yep. And they will hawk the latest shooter game at you also in the process.
Yeah. I was going to say about Samara, something that I have never really thought about until you guys just brought it up. Her reserved nature made me not over-sexualize her in my mind, especially when I was younger and playing these games for the first time. Like, every Asari was just like the hot blue, you know, feminine-shaped alien. And every Asari in the games is presented in many ways as like a very sexualized, very feminine character. And I think Samara, even during my earlier playthroughs when I was younger, and especially now when I play through the games again, in my mind, I'm just like, yes, ma'am. You know, she's very much like this mom figure. And it's interesting that Samara's character is presented that way because Matriarch Benezia in my mind isn't. You know, right. Matriarch Benezia in my mind is like, oh yeah, she's like the crazy hot mom. but Samara is just like, yes, ma'am. This is the only way I can imagine I would ever respond to her in real life if I was actually Commander Shepard. So I think that's credit to the writers and to the way she was written and her backstory and her characters. She has this gravitas, and she has this like you said, MJ, this reserved nature that almost forces you to respect her because you realize there is centuries of wisdom there, and it is not to be fucked with, essentially.
Yeah,
she is untouchable in a way.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I also think that me as Shepard wouldn't be as candid with her as my Shepard is. I'd be way more scared and intimidated, I think.
Yes. Yeah, very much.
But
I would just be like, I just want you to like me so much. Please just like me.
From here, we go talk to Grunt, and this is one of the conversations I had forgotten about, but was really interesting to me. That, like, you have this conversation with Grunt, and this happens a few times, where you're not having the same conversation. Grunt is focused on a thing that he's learned or that he's excited about his experience, and you're trying to understand, and at the end of the day, it's just, I'm excited about this thing that probably has to do with murder or violence. And essentially, like, the conversation, like, he talks about this battle that was imprinted and about taking out Turians and, like, Turian murder, and then, like, excitedly says, I figured it out. I don't like Turians. And it's like facepalm. Like, but something happened here to me that happens to you a lot, MJ, that you mentioned, that I hadn't noticed as much, but I noticed here with Grunt. I took the Paragon's path of saying, if you're going to talk like this, I don't think I'm going to come down here as much. And what I actually said was not that. It was, or what I chose to say was, I don't think this is right. And then I said something along like that, like, oh, I don't know if I'll come down here as much. And I was like, I don't want to say that to Grunt. He's my lizard son.
Yeah.
Like, translate the words correctly. Like, that's the biggest problem I have with Mass Effect now in the years that it's existed, is that I cannot stand that you pick something to say, and then sometimes you say something that is not related. Like, it just drives me nuts.
Yeah, the tone isn't quite the same.
Yeah. And like with Grunt, I want to be nurturing, and that's not what I was. And I was like, God damn it.
Yeah. With Grunt, the tank imprints are finally starting to sink in.
Yeah.
Just not quite in the way that Okier planned, perhaps. And maybe it just takes time for Grunt to make the connections that Okier wanted him to make. And when he tells you that he hates Turians, and he says, "I thought you'd be glad." And it just reminded me of, aren't you proud of me? Mom, I just want you to be proud.
Yeah. It was very interesting. And it's like, it's clear that like what he's experiencing and what you're experiencing are not the same, like on any level yet. There is no sync with the two of you, which I mean makes sense considering, you know, Grunt didn't exist a week ago ish.
Yeah. I did also defend my boyfriend.
Yeah, of course you did. I did not, because he's not my boyfriend.
You better not start stuff with Garrus, or I will ground you.
I love Garrus. It just I didn't feel the need to defend.
But do you love him enough? Because it doesn't sound like you do.
It doesn't.
Don't help him. Don't do that. After this conversation with Grunt, of course, our final check-in is with Jack, and this is what leads us to find out about her past and get her loyalty mission. Something that caught me off guard, although I've been very kind to Jack because I do genuinely want to know more and I am interested in her. I got a genuine thank you from her, and I was like, "Oh, you're welcome." I was like completely caught off guard by it.
I did too, and basically, the whole thing is Jack tells Shepard that Cerberus raised her, tortured her, tried to break her so that way she could be a more powerful biotic. And the facility she was raised in also housed other children. And she says that everyone in that facility hated her. And the day that an emergency happened, she took advantage of it and she broke out and she fought her way through all the guards and children. And she'd been on the run ever since. And this is why she hates Cerberus. And honestly, I don't fucking blame you.
Yeah.
I would hate them too.
I mean, yeah.
It is legit that she got the short end of the stick. And what's really interesting about this conversation, too, is with ease, Jack talks about killing the guards and killing the other children. And, like, it's not that she's happy about it. It's just that she's lived with it so long that it doesn't even faze her to talk about it. She talks about it like reciting the history of the world. Like, it is what it is, which is fascinating and incredibly depressing.
My heart is just so broken for the little girl that she could have been.
Yeah. Same. And I'm also a sucker for like a moment to step in and help someone, and like I really genuinely do want to help Jack.
Yeah, I'm down. Let's fuck him up. I'm ready to throw hands in Jack's defense. Like, that was fucked up and you didn't deserve it. Let's destroy a building.
Yeah, no, that's legit. And I agree. I think, like, in my mind, like, at this point, based on my Shepherd, if we didn't have an order for the season already, I'd be like, all right, let's go. In fact, that's what I said.
Let's go right
like,
now.
I was like, I chose the Paragon options. Like, let's go. We're going now. Let's put in the coordinates. I'm raring to go.
Well, we still have to pick someone else up before we start doing any of that.
That is true.
Okay, so that was all our check-ins. Anyone have anything to say about anything else before we move on?
Nope.
Cool. Back to Ilium. Matt, did you forward a questionable shipping notice to Thax?
I did.
When you were in the warehouse? Okay. I really love this. We get approached by a very polite, business-like Krogan to be like, hello, did you forward this shipping notice to Thax? Because we really appreciate it. And here is something for your trouble. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a lovely day.
This Krogan, and it could just be because I'm currently playing a lot of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 on my Switch, but and this character is in it, but he reminds me of Beast from the X-Men, just because he's this large person, this large being that speaks so properly. So it immediately takes my mind to Beast from the X-Men. And I was like, this guy is just awesome. Like, I want to know more about this guy. And he just wanders off. Yeah. I was like, where are you going? Be my friend.
Right, I want to pick your brain, because the only Krogan I know are monsters.
Yeah, are not quite as well-spoken, let's say, as you are.
I wonder if that was Thax, though.
Oh, you know, it could be. I don't know that I've actually looked into that, but
And just kind of posing as someone else.
right,
To kind of protect his identity.
could be.
I always wonder that.
I also finished the Liara mission when I got back on the station.
Oh, do you want to talk about that now?
Sure. In the last episode, we talked about how we did some hacking for Liara and brought her some data. And this time around, she asked you to follow up on five different suspects that she suspects might be able to get her to, or is coming after her, I think, to stop her working with the Shadow Broker, right? Or
Working against the Shadow Broker. She's working against the Shadow Broker, and she's trying to figure out who of these people is his agent.
That's what I meant, yeah.
That's foiling her.
yeah. And so you have to hack 5 different terminals, and then you can make, based on the information you're provided, a judgment call on which one of these 5 suspects are the person. And what's really fascinating about this is that it's none of them. And once you've found all of the information, you can say as much, and then Liara puts 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really fascinating, like the idea of in a game not having to take action, saying, you know, it's not any of these things, and then there still being a result.
Yeah, so it's kind of like an if-then type of situation. I wrote down like all of the races that I encountered and what their titles were or what their gender identity was, so I could keep track. And the observer is referred to as female, and none of the other races were referred to as female. They were all referred to using masculine pronouns. So that's what tips you off to like, yeah, it's none of this. And she figures out that it's her secretary, Nyxeris. Which, good on Nyxeris for doing her job super well. Like, she got super close to Liara without her knowing. And if it wasn't for Shepard, Liara would have been in a lot of trouble. So Nyxeris super did her job well.
But I do appreciate also the new Liara, how she's like, oh, it's this person. I'll call you back. And, like, just handles it.
Yeah. Oh, buddy. Like, it is jarring to see how much Liara has changed from the wide-eyed, innocent 18-year-old that was on our ship to, like, this more mature woman just 2 years later. And, like, she feels so much more like an adult now.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like, if I had met this Liara, then maybe a romance would have been possible, but she was too much of a baby when we met.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's why I never pursued her. But also this Liara makes me uncomfortable because, you know, it happens with all of us. Like, we have a friend that we've known since they were 5, and you hit high school with that friend and they change. You know, it puts you off because, like, you've already always known this friend of yours as way A, and then they shift to A B, you know, which that didn't work as well as I wanted. But, you know, they changed.
Your point was made.
Right. They changed personalities hard, and you're like, oh, but you're my young friend that I knew that we used to play with action figures. Like, how did you become this, like, cigarette smoking, drug dealing riffraff? Like, I'm making extreme examples, but, like, it's just... It's interesting.
And definitely not autobiographical.
Not really. I'll be honest. But no, it's interesting to see a character who seems so innocent take a hard turn like this and continue to interact with them, because when they talk to you, they still sound as they always did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes me curious if internally at BioWare that was always the plan with Liara, or there was some sort of internal discussion about how young/immature she came off in the first game, and there was a decision made at some point in the writer's room to really, like, mature her up or show a darker side of her. And I've always been curious if this was always the plan for Liara's character arc, or if this was a decision that was made based off of how she was perceived in Mass Effect 1.
Yeah, I don't know.
My perception is the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
That is what I'm inclined to think, because if this was the plan all along, then they did not set it up well enough, in my opinion.
Right, like Matt wouldn't have felt that there was such a left turn suddenly for her character if the seeds of it had already been planted in the first game, but they weren't planted.
So I do think that they kind of looked back on it and said, yeah, we could have done a little bit better. Let's mature her. Okay. anything else on Ilium before we head over to Dantius?
No, I'm good. I'm ready to take on Dantius Towers, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we head over to that kind of middle part of Ilium before the spaceport, we approach someone named Serena, I think her name was, or was it Saria?
It's Serena, I believe, is correct.
Serena. And Serena tells you that she helped Thane get to Dantius Towers because Nasana is a stone cold bitch.
Yeah, she
basically what the thing is.
She doesn't really mince words much.
Which is the review of Nasana you get from multiple people as you climb this tower.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, did you interact with Nasana in Mass Effect 1?
I honestly can't remember. I don't know. Does she say something when you confront her that tips you off to that? Because if that's the case, then no, I didn't. I don't think I spoke to her.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
She does say.
Yeah, she has a line in that final scene right before Thane kills her.
Also, when you're talking to Serena, she tells you that it's Nasana, and you can have a moment like, oh yeah, I remember her.
Yeah.
She had me kill her sister.
Yeah.
Right.
Then I definitely didn't speak to her, yeah, because I didn't have a moment like that.
Yeah. I did, so. There's where we differ. Let's see.
We have already covered that you were way more elaborate and fine-tooth combed about the first game than I was. It was a mistake, but we can't go back and change the past. We can only look towards the future.
Look, my superiority over you is very important.
Fair enough.
So Serena lets us know that Thane is going after Nasana, but no one has purchased the contract. He's just doing it. Which at that point, is he really an assassin?
Yeah, usually how assassinating works is like there's money and a contract and you're doing it for some reason. That doesn't seem to be the case here.
I'm not sure if killing Nasana really has political impact, but I guess it does. She is a very big name on Ilium.
Yeah, and she's apparently
That's
mistreated
what really
a lot of
makes it an
people.
assassination.
So
she's a terrible person, so I was totally fine with like letting Thane do what he had to do.
Yeah, more or less same.
Yeah, and I think the game really pushed you to have that opinion also, you know? Like, Serena's like, yeah, I hate her. She's an awful person. And then everyone else you meet in the tower is just like, yeah, what an awful boss we have. And the game just continues to reinforce this, like, she's a bad person. Let
it's
her
a
die.
good way to tell the player, like, seriously, don't feel bad. She's the worst.
Right.
Like, you're not going to have a choice in this. Do not feel bad about it. This is not morally gray. She is bad.
Yeah, I'm almost certain that level was play tested, and BioWare definitely got reviews at some point that was like, I kind of liked Asana. Why'd she have to die? You know, like, why wasn't there a choice to save her? And so BioWare was like, no, we got to, like, really hammer this point home.
Yeah.
That she needs to die.
Yeah.
Well, especially since it is the pivotal thing that brings you to Thane. Like, if they didn't make it confirm that she was supposed to die, you might have doubt or feel bad. And they didn't want that to be the case with this. They wanted you to be all in on what's happening as well as Thane himself.
Right. It would really hurt Thane's character if you were just like, yo, why'd you kill her? You know, that plants that seed of distrust before he even joins your crew. So, yeah, I think that was a fine line for them to walk, and I'm sure this level in particular was difficult to construct from a storytelling standpoint because you had to justify essentially an assassin, somebody who has done nothing but kill since they were, 6 years old?
Yeah.
And they had to justify that character to the player and convince the player that this was somebody they'd want on their team, or at least somebody that they'd want to get to know better.
Yeah, totally.
On a completely unrelated note, I have to say, after reading the Mass Effect Annihilation tie-in for the Andromeda book game, that I know so much about the Drell now, and every moment with Thane is just layered with more context, and I'm like fascinated.
Yeah.
Fascinated. Just so fascinated with everything Thane does and says.
Yeah, same. I mean, I don't even have that background, and I still feel that way about Thane. but like battling my way through this building. First of all, I just want to say on a combat perspective, I was in my element. I've been playing the second game long enough now that I am darting from enemy to enemy with my biotic charge. And my favorite thing about fighting mechs is they explode into metal confetti when I charge them, and it's the best. It's just my favorite thing. But as we're battling our way through the tower, we encounter a ton of Solarian dock workers, and they were not treated well. Needless to say.
Yeah, no, they've been getting gunned down. They were just randomly murdered for no reason.
Because they were there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, just basically in the way, and Nasana needed them out of the way, so set the robots on them, essentially.
The robot dogs.
As we're scaling the building, there are two major choices we get to make. The first is when we encounter and surprise...
3.
Are there 3?
Yes.
Well, it starts with the Merc. Oh, no, you're right. There is 3. I forgot about the other one because it's so fast. But yeah, the first major choice you get to make is there is a dying Solarian when you first enter the building, and you can choose to save him or not, which I did. I'm assuming you did as well, MJ.
Yeah, remember
Yeah,
when
who
we
let
were
him
talking...
die?
Remember when we had Drew Mick on and we were talking about the Batarian and how it just seems so senseless to not give him Metagel?
Yeah.
This was another moment. Why would I not give you Metagel? It doesn't cost me anything.
Right. Why would the most renegade of people be like, nah, like here's like a thing I have basically an infinite supply of because I'm backed by Cerberus, a multi-gazillion-dollar corporation. You can't have it. You know, like it just doesn't make sense in any way for any shepherd to not treat this guy with a free thing that he has an unlimited supply of.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true.
Kindness is a renegade action.
So we haven't discussed who our teams were this time.
We forgot.
I brought Kasumi and Jack.
Kasumi and Garrus.
All right.
And I actually watched a Let's Play of this, and what I thought was interesting is the guy that I was watching brought Kasumi, and which seems like a popular choice, and Miranda. My girl Miranda.
Interesting.
I haven't brought Miranda with me at all because I don't like her yet.
No, yeah, same.
And I don't trust her to have my back.
Yep, her and...
She does and says nothing notable in this mission, so you're not missing out.
When I do save this Solarian, though, in my playthrough, Jack went, he's not going to know anything about the assassin. Like, she's just so perturbed that we're stopping to save this person because it's an inconvenience to getting the information. And I want to look over my shoulder and be like, shh. Not what this is about.
No one asked you.
Right?
I don't think anyone said anything to me when I healed him. I think Garrus pointed out that he was going to die if I did not help him.
Sounds like something Garrus would say.
Yeah, Garrus has been very interesting throughout this entire mission. He's been, like, super impressed with everything Thane has done.
Yeah, that also sounds like Garrus. My teammates didn't really say anything of note throughout the mission. Kasumi more or less backed my plays and would be like, oh my god, that's terrible kind of stuff. But beyond that, the only of note thing I can remember is Jack being snarky about us wasting our time saving someone's life, which, knowing what I know about Jack now, is legit, I guess, at this point, at least from her perspective.
Yeah. Overall, I really like the mood of this mission. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, you catch the Eclipse guards talking about the assassin that they can't find and how teams are going dark and no one knows what's going on. And as you walk through a door, a body just drops from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Because Thane killed them and dropped them down. She's like, God damn, what if that hit me?
Yeah, I agree that this mission feels very real time, I guess is a word for it, but you're chasing Thane and it feels like you're actually in a chase with Thane, right? It doesn't feel like these are like pre-scripted scenes when in actuality they are, but it feels like you are just like on Thane's tail. He's just like one step ahead of you, and any door you walk through could be the door that Thane is standing behind. And that I really liked that about this mission.
Yeah.
The urgency was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the mission, like, I never felt overwhelmed by it. It felt like the first kind of tactical mission. Like, I felt like every time I entered a room, I got an opportunity more or less to like assess the situation and then engage, and also take in everything that was going on around me.
Yeah, it was a like fun mission combat wise. I didn't feel too pressured. I didn't feel bored. Like there was just enough going on to keep me interested and engaged, and I just never felt overwhelmed, which I think is really important for just enjoying yourself.
Yeah, for sure. We should talk about choice number 2, which is we come upon an unsuspecting Eclipse member, Merc, who is talking to one of his higher ups, and you essentially corner him against a glass window and interrogate him to find out more about Thane. I will also assume, MJ, you took the Paragon route of convincing him it's not worth his life to give you the information.
Yes, I did, but you know what my brain did while watching this scene?
What?
Do you remember, I think it was in Winter Soldier, where Steve and Natasha are confronting someone from Hydra?
Okay.
And they're like on a roof, and the guy says to Steve, "You wouldn't drop me off of this building." And Steve is like, "You're right, I wouldn't, but she would." And I was like, oh man, I wish I could have done that with Garrus.
Yeah, I feel that same way with Jack. Like, I wouldn't push him out the window, but Jack certainly would. And that'd be so fun to just be like, yeah, you're right, I won't. But she will. And then her just biotic blast him, like, through the window. Yeah.
It would be so perfect. But no, I did not take the renegade action. I did convince him to walk away.
Same.
This was the
Missed
scene in
opportunities.
one of the early Mass Effect 2 trailers, I remember.
Yeah.
This was one of the big scenes where they showed that you could essentially do that. And I think the intent behind that trailer was to show how Mass Effect 2 was getting darker.
Yeah.
It was less the sci-fi utopia that was Mass Effect 1. And we were now going to start to see like the underbelly of the Mass Effect universe. And I remember this scene is like imprinted in my mind from that trailer. And from the times I kicked this guy or threw this guy out the window, which, you know, I did just to see it happen.
Sure.
Not my ideal choice. My ideal choice is the same as you guys. But I will say the Paragon choice is very much just like, how easy is it to convince this guy that he shouldn't work for, you know, his boss? Like, it just, I don't know. I feel like if somebody walked, I guess if your life is threatened, you'd be like, yeah, screw this. I'm not going to put my life in danger just to like protect somebody who's just cutting me a check. But it just seemed really easy. Maybe the male Shep voice acting was subpar. Maybe Mark Muir didn't do a great job, as much as I love him with this line, but he just sort of like leaned in and was like, is it really worth it? And the Merc guy was like, no, you're right. Totally not worth it. Bye.
I mean, I think part of that is they often like to portray the nonchalance that Shepard has in convincing people to do stuff, like this gravitas that Shepard has. And so while I hear you, I think that's kind of the intent, is like, Shepard doesn't have to get loud. He can just be like, yeah, you don't want to do this. And they go, yeah, I don't want to do this. Almost like a Jedi mind trick a little bit.
Right. I mean, I can't blame the guy. If my back was against a glass wall and the commander that I thought was dead was standing in front of me and threatening me, I'd be like, yeah, you can have all the passwords, man. Here you go.
You can have whatever you want. Please just don't kill me.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like it took a really long time for us to encounter Asari mercs.
Yes. Well, weren't there Asari mercs on in the other mission we did on Ilium as well?
No. I meant in this particular mission.
Oh, yes.
Like, we had gone through a couple of floors and was like, you know, there are Asari in this merc group, right? They're not all human. And some of them are even Solarian. What the hell? I was just very confused why I was seeing, like, all humans.
Yeah, we didn't get them until, like, the second third of the last third of the combat. And then that's all we got. Like, all of the more harder to kill enemies were Asaris with several sets of armor and constantly yelling at you.
Which I guess makes sense because they're harder to kill and, like, they're more difficult enemies.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like to see diversity. Crazy me.
No, yeah. I think that third game has the best merc diversity from what I remember, but also it's been a while, so I could be wrong. I often am. So the final major choice we get to make as we're battling is we encounter another group of Solarian workers in a room, and one of them pulls a gun on you immediately. And you can choose to disarm him, which is a Renegade Act, or just kind of talk him through it, which I assume we both talked him through it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the Renegade was going to be, so instead I, waited.
Yeah, same.
Which I probably would have done anyway. I probably would have, given him a chance to take a deep breath to see that I wasn't one of the mercs, because he was scared.
Yeah, and he pretty much passes out the minute you get his gun from him.
Yeah.
This poor dude.
And I mean, you're wearing body armor with body shields. You can probably take the first shot and still have enough time to disarm him, you know?
Yeah, poor Talon. And they let you know that they haven't really seen anyone, but there is definitely someone moving very quickly and smoothly through the towers.
Yeah, that the guard that was in the room with them, they weren't looking. They looked up and his head exploded.
Yeah.
Which the description of that, I can't help but laugh. It just sounds so funny because they're like, yeah, his head just exploded. They said it so candidly, and that's just funny to me.
This was one of the moments where Garrus was like, nice.
Oh God, of course. God, he's
professional respect.
Such a fanboy.
Let's see. The view from the towers is really beautiful.
Yeah, when you get on the outside scaffolding and you can look out at the city. I took a couple of screenshots of that because it looks so awesome, and I've noticed it before, but I really kind of took it in. Also, it doesn't hurt that the graphics on the PC are better than what I'm previously used to on the Xbox version, just ever so slightly. Look, I have to suffer through keyboard and mouse, so I got to get something out of it. But yeah, I was also taken aback by it. I did stop and look around and take some screenshots. I definitely did drink it in.
So when we get onto the bridge, I kind of expected the wind to have some effect since it was mentioned.
Nothing. Not a thing.
Yeah, nothing. And you can even see the wind. I'm like, why did you even bother with this?
Something Mass Effect feels.
No effect on me. What the hell?
Yeah. No, yeah. This fight was a little frustrating for me just because I forget that the second Mass Effect specifically has a lot of long-range fights that you have to be within a certain range to hit the targets, which makes sense. Guns in real life also taper off after a certain distance, and so you can't hit everything. But it was just really frustrating to be close enough that the rocket launchers could hit me, but I still couldn't shoot them, even with my pistol, which has a longer range. And it wasn't until you get right near them that you can shoot them. That was a little frustrating for me.
Kasumi was really useful for this because she would just teleport over there.
And I love how she announces it every time. She's like, going dark, and then does her thing. And then you just hear off to the side, as someone falls over.
So I thought that the bridge fight was really challenging, but made it through without dying.
Same. Yeah, this is the first mission I've done in our newest playthrough where I didn't die at all, which I was surprised. I also have gotten way more anal retentive about saving. Old habits die hard from the first game. But yeah, I didn't die on this mission at all. I thought it was well balanced, and it was well set for my moveset, which is a lot of close range stuff, which not every battle is. In fact, a lot of them are not very kind to close range combat, and so this one felt really good to utilize my skills.
Yeah, I felt like I had a lot of opportunities as a sentinel.
Also, something satisfying about using Shockwave and watching people just fly off the bridge.
Yes, Slam is really satisfying to watch.
Yeah,
too.
oh, I'm sure.
Okay, so after fighting on the bridge, we walk into Nasana's penthouse.
This
exchange.
Oh, God.
I really like this exchange because she just looks at you and goes, "You're dead."
Yeah, and you're
Shepard
like,
says, "I got better." I'm like, that is a mood, Shepard.
Yeah, right.
Such a good line.
Yeah.
I also said to her, Because she thinks that you're the assassin, and I said, maybe I just missed you.
Yeah, I didn't get
Bring
that
it in.
option.
Let's hug. Let's hug. It'll be fine.
Yeah, the
And
thing I wanted to say that I hinted at earlier on is that this is one of my favorite cutscenes in the entire game, just because of the movement in it, from pre-Thane entrance until the end of the cutscene. Like, there's just a fluidity to it that I think is absolutely stunning. And then especially once Thane engages and takes out the guards and kills Nasana, like it there's just it's just really gorgeous. I just really am in awe of it. And there are a lot of other scenes that are cool or interesting, but this one just felt actually beautiful to me.
Yeah, you can
Thane
tell
is
this scene was given a nice extra coat of polish, because if I recall correctly, this scene was either shown off in a trailer or at E3 in some capacity. And I think that is pretty obvious when you're actually playing the game too. I agree that the cinematography here, the pacing, everything from the camera angles to the lighting to the actual animations of Thane jumping in, snapping necks, punching the right people, shooting the other people, like, it's all very fluid. It's all very cinematic. And you can tell that there's just a slight extra coat of polish on this scene in particular. And it really makes it stand out.
Yeah, seeing Thane drop down, I was just struck by how much of an artist he is and how gentle he is too. He delivers killing blows quickly without making anyone suffer. He shoots Nasana once and he gently lays her to rest, crossing her arms over her chest. And it's reverential.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a dance. It's a ritual for him.
yeah, that moment, and the cinematography on that moment, especially when he puts the gun to her stomach and she like gasps, she goes, ugh, and then he pulls the trigger. Like, there's a gap and there's a space, and it feels like it's both eons and instant, because it's just the pacing of it and the cinematography of it that makes it quite beautiful and interesting for sure.
And I think the silence right after that too, right? Like, Thane doesn't have anything to say after that because he goes right into praying over her body. And Shepard is just like, hi?
Yeah. Like, fancy meeting you here. It's not like I've been tracking you or anything. You come here often.
You can pretty much say, hi, can we talk? Like, hello? And it's really interesting also because, Thane then, of course, states the importance of prayer, and just the way he speaks. No other character speaks the way Thane speaks. He has a gravitas that's very different from Samara. Like, it still yields respect, but I'm not intimidated by him. I'm just enraptured by the way he speaks because of how he carries himself.
Honestly, Drell are pure poetry.
Yeah.
Like, he's religious, but that doesn't put me off because it's very personal to him and it's not outwardly pushed, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, as a person in actual life, in meat space, as it were, I don't mind religious people. I mind being proselytized to. I hate being preached to. But if you're
Right.
religious and you get something from it, so be it. As long as it doesn't directly hurt or discriminate other people, like, you do whatever you've got to do. And Thane is definitely like that. It's just there's the kind of a beauty to the soft way he engages with it, and how important it is to him.
Can I share my favorite Thane line from this scene?
I would assume you would.
Yeah, absolutely.
The universe is a dark place. I'm trying to make it brighter before I die.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's a good one.
It's a fucking movie.
Right.
Like,
So
I want to
good.
die every single day, but the only thing that keeps me from doing it is also wanting to, like, do good things for people. And I can't do that if I'm dead.
Wow.
And it just sums up Thane's character so well, right? Like,
Yeah.
to describe Thane's mission, his life, who he is, and how he got to where he is, that's the line. I'm dying, and this universe that I've experienced, because he's experienced a lot of pain and suffering and death his entire life, he knows the universe is dark. And now that he's dying, he's filled with a certain level of regret for his actions and for the life he's led. So he's trying to bring a little bit of light back to it before he finally leaves, Like, that sentence is Thane in a nutshell.
I have to admit, Thane is also a type.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree. And also, like, the way he carries himself, his clothing, like he's wearing that awesome trench coat with the giant anime collar. You know, and like, I look at that collar and it has like each hanging part that comes out around his face has giant holes for giant buttons, but there are no buttons on his coat. So I want to know why there are those giant button holes. What's that about?
It's an aesthetic choice. It's
But also the design of
isn't it also like pretty like deep V also? Like
Uh-huh.
his chest is like, you can see part of his chest because the shirt he's wearing is like very deep V neck, and yeah, it's an aesthetic. It's a choice.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would like to talk about the female gaze for a second.
please do.
All you.
Okay, so I want to put Jacob and Thane next to each other for a second.
Okay.
Jacob is very much the male power fantasy. He is swole AF. He is a beefy dude. He's stoic and reserved. He is like Batman light.
Mm-hmm.
Like what dudes want to be, while Thane is what women want. He is built for speed and not power, so he's lean. He has huge eyes because seeing your partner's eyes is really important to a lot of women. He has full lips that speaks to sensitivity and like just being completely kissable. And it just, everything about his character design, despite being an alien, speaks entirely to the female gaze. Whoever designed this understood what women want.
Well, and also, like,
And he's also got a perfect memory, so he's never gonna forget your fucking anniversary.
Exactly.
So that's
And
another.
he speaks with such devotion no matter what he's speaking about.
yeah, for sure. And like, he does something that I've heard only very specific examples of other humans doing. It reminds me actually of stories I hear from friends who are actors who work on sets who talk about Tom Cruise, that when he talks to you, he's not thinking about something else. When you look in his eyes, he's completely focused on you. You are the center of his attention. Even if you're a gaffer or, you know, a sound designer, it doesn't matter. And I get that sense from Thane, this idea of a being that when you're talking to them, you're the focus. It doesn't matter what he's thinking about, what he's going through. He looks at you like you're the most important thing in the world, which is very powerful. Even if it's non-sexual, it's still really powerful.
Yeah. It creates some feelings.
Yeah. Also, I like the design of the Drell in general. You know,
Yeah.
like I like all of the alien races for different reasons, but what I like about the Drell is that they are humanoid and reptilian in a way that's still really interesting. It's an interesting combination. Like, they could have easily become alligator people or something, but the fact that, you know, the fringes are designed, the way they blink, you know, the patterning, all of it is just really aesthetically pleasing and interesting to look at, like MJ was saying. And it's really fascinating from like a design perspective as well.
Yeah, very Shape of Water-esque.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
better.
I was thinking Shape of Water too.
Yeah. You know, Guillermo del Toro knows what women want is what I'm understanding at this point.
Yeah,
Fish
that's
people.
the connection there for sure.
What's interesting about this scene is when you have the conversation with Thane and he says that he's dying, your immediate reaction could be, and it was mine, oh, I'm sorry. Like, oh my God, that's terrible.
That wasn't Shepard's reaction, though.
Yeah.
Mine was, are you contagious? This is important.
Yeah. I don't know.
I cannot bring you on my ship of multiple different kinds of aliens if you're going to kill all of them.
Yeah. But it's really interesting to me that you do have the option to say that, to be like, oh my God, I'm sorry you're dying. Like, because it's just so nonchalant from Thane. It's accepted at this point. He's accepted his death, which is interesting. It's interesting to engage with a character regularly from this point forward who knows he's going to die and how he views the suicide mission and what you're setting out to do versus the other crewmates.
Yeah,
Thane is a
that's
whole
exactly
new-
what I was going to say. In the context of this suicide mission, every other crew member ostensibly wants to live, right? But Thane has already come to terms with his ultimate demise. And it is interesting to have this one character on your crew as part of your team on this suicide mission that no one is sure they're actually going to come back from, who has accepted their death, who has come to terms with it. And I think it really puts in perspective the not only like the danger and the scope of the mission that Shepard is on, and the stakes, but also on a personal level how it affects each crew member. Because if you had no crew member that had thought about dying or had come to terms with death, you wouldn't have that fuller picture of like, oh, this is a suicide mission. This means something. Like people have lives, and they could end here if we don't succeed. And Thane is one character that you interact with who, I wouldn't say he necessarily doesn't care about that or the success of the mission. He obviously wants it to succeed, but to him, his personal life is less at stake. For him, it's about, like we said earlier, bringing back some sort of light into the darkness of the universe that he's experienced.
Yeah,
it's bigger for him than just his own life.
Making sure that everybody else is safe.
Yeah. And he even says that in this scene at one point. I think near the end of the scene, he says that, where he's like, it's not my life I care about, Shepard. It's defeating the collectors. It's protecting other lives that I care about. And because of that, I will join your team.
He's such a sweet boy. And yet Jacob is such a dick to him.
Yeah. He's very tender for sure.
I was so mad at Jacob, like just being a flat out
once
asshole
we're on the
to
ship.
Thane when you bring him on the ship. Jacob's just like, if you want an assassin watching your back.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me because Jacob has been so okay with so many other things.
Right.
And they don't even elaborate on this, like his loyalty.
No, this is just definitely like a toxic masculinity thing, and he feels threatened.
Yeah, which
like,
actually,
he's not threatened by Garrus, but like Thane walks on with that popped collar, and he's just like, whoa.
Yeah. Which is interesting to bring up toxic masculinity, because that's actually a pretty good take, because the way he reacts is very irrational. And that's often the way toxic masculinity is expressed, is in an irrational, like, I'm the better man, that fuck that guy kind of thing, And I hadn't thought about that, but that's actually an interesting perspective on it.
I trust Thane 30% more than I trust Jacob.
And I just met him. Yeah, absolutely. Because he moves with a grace and speaks with a grace that you're like, all right, there's something to this guy. Like, I think he's got my back. Like, I respect, same with the Justicar in the last mission. Like, when people present themselves a certain way, it's very easy to trust when they show you who they are, which at this point, Jacob and Miranda have not done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a really hard time seeing Jacob's point of view from this scene in particular. I just, maybe it's just because he wasn't there and he didn't see Thane in action, or he didn't have that conversation with Thane that Shepard did in the penthouse. But I have a hard time putting myself in Jacob's shoes here and trying to understand where he's coming from. And like, I truly think he feels threatened in some way. And it's just like a very personal thing for him, and not a greater, like, how does this affect the team? How does this affect the mission? For him, it's just like some sort of weird, aggressive personal threat of some sort.
Yeah. I think Thane also presents like a threat to his standing with Shepard as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But then there's this really
I just don't understand. Maybe there's something about Jacob's past that I am unaware of, but like, why have these like feelings about assassins in particular, right? Like, that seemed to be his argument in this scene, is like, why would we want an assassin, someone who is hired to kill, watching our back?
Yeah, meanwhile, we already have Zaid on the ship, and that's exactly what Zaid is.
And Zaid is worse!
And Zaid is worse. Zaid would even say Zaid is worse.
God, yes, he would. But then there's this really cute moment between Thane and Edie, where Edie tells Thane where he could sleep, and Thane's just like, and AI, my thanks. And he bows, and Edie's like, he seemed quite civil.
Yes,
even
I love
Edie
that.
is charmed by him.
That was a great moment, because up until that point, Edie has mostly interacted very blandly with the crew, and I know part of that is she's still feeling reserved. But yeah, that was the first really emotional reaction outside of how she's prodding Joker that we've gotten, and I really loved it.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky Joker wasn't in the room at the time. Otherwise, the toxic masculinity in the room would have brought down the Normandy.
Aw. Poor Joker. Let's see. Any other notes about this mission in general?
No. I think that my new power team is probably going to be Thane and Jack going forward. But it's tough because I really like Kasumi as well. Also, I'm kind of bummed that you can't, and this is not relevant to this mission at all, but I'm kind of bummed that you can't pursue a relationship with Kasumi because she is definitely my type.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I agree.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
She's
What I will
another
say,
chaotic
just some like
bisexual
final
woman.
thoughts about this mission as a whole, and particularly about Thane. I think BioWare and the writers and the developers that had to construct this mission and this introduction to Thane as a character to the Drell race, this was a big ask, right? Like, you have to convince the player to like an assassin who has done nothing but kill his entire life, and he also has to be sympathetic because he's dying, but you also have to explain that he's the deadliest assassin in the world, and that's why he in the universe, and that's why he is an asset to your team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are like 4 boxes that this mission had to check, and I think it knocked it out of the park spectacularly. Like, there was no question of why should I trust this guy, because Thane, the way he's written, the way he's voice acted, the way we are first introduced to him in the first conversation we have with him, makes it clear how much we should respect this guy. That he walks with this gravitas. He's got this self-assuredness. So that checks that box. And then the box of showing that he is one of the deadliest assassins in the world is checked off very quickly by one of the most fluid and well animated and well shot scenes in this entire game. When he walks in and clears a room, kills his like wipes out his target in one fluid motion, and quietly prays over her dead body. And you're like, fuck, this guy knows what he's doing. He's done this before. So I think overall, like, this mission did a spectacular, and this is one of the reasons I love Thane so much, is because this mission introduced me to him in an amazing way.
Yeah.
And I think it was a tough ask to sell Shepard and the player on this character, and BioWare did an incredible job of pulling that off in this mission. I think there could have been many ways to misstep when it came to Thane, but I think one of the reasons why he is such a popular character, on top of just being this incredibly handsome, amazing, charming guy, is that he was presented to us in such an incredible way, in such a good mission.
Yeah, I agree.
Same.
I love Thane. Maybe I'll get that body pillow
Oh,
too.
God.
Just be surrounded by both of my boyfriends.
You do what you got to do. Just, I don't know that you'll be able to keep the Thane one from John, though.
Oh, that's true.
I hope the body pillow is like 60% collar.
Right? It's got to be. It's got to be.
Okay. So, our next segment, Fandom Corner, I have 2 different things I could bring to the table. One is safe for work, and one is not safe for work. Which one do we want to talk
Well,
about?
considering we are a non-visual medium, the not safe for work one is fine, I feel like. Like, let's be not safe for work.
Right, who's
All right.
blasting podcasts on the Bose speaker at work for everyone to hear?
Right.
You know, like, hopefully you're listening to this on headphones while you're at work or in your car or whatever.
Hey, if you
Don't
have
wear
this
headphones
on
in your car.
speaker,
That's not what I meant. But you know what I mean.
hey, if you have this on speaker right now, you might want to put on headphones, because we're going to talk about the crafty hedonist who makes fantasy dildos for your geeky dreams. I can't even say it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's fantastic.
That is amazing.
There are 3, 6, 8 different dildos inspired by different races of the Mass Effect world.
Wow.
One being...
What are the races? You got to tell us now. We need deets.
I am. So what brought me to this was I was looking for anything Thane related on Etsy to promote a seller, and I found a dildo called the Siha,
Of course.
which is inspired by the Drell. Listen to this item description. Inspired by our favorite reptilian assassin, this is the Siha. Made from platinum silicone, contoured with wonderful ridges and textured tip, this big guy is sure to leave you breathless once in your sights. Has a nice base so it can be used as is or mounted into a saddle or adjustable strap-on. This space boyfriend will have you saying, I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite dick on the Citadel.
Oh my god.
Amazing.
I hope
It
all
is
the
fantastic.
descriptions end with like that.
They do. It's
Yes.
fantastic. So there is the Siha. There's the Archangel. Morden.
Okay.
Enkindled. Harbinger. Keela. Taoshe, but I'm not sure what that one is. Hang on, I have to look at Taoshe and find out what it is. That's inspired by Andromeda.
Okay, so we'll skip that one since I still haven't played it.
Yes. Matt can't know about it. And the last one is Legion.
Which technically is not... Well, I guess it is a race. They are a race. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is incredible. I would never purchase one, but because I don't have a need for one. But I think they're phenomenal, and all of the sci-fi fans who would want one should get them because they're amazing.
It's so good.
And just to overthink this for like 2 minutes, if you can indulge me.
Sure.
I think this speaks to just how important and impactful some of these characters have become to so many people over the years, right? Like to the extent that some people potentially derive sexual pleasure physically using their imaginations and using what they know and the connections they've built with these characters in this game. And I think that's amazing. You know,
Yes.
not every game and not every game character inspires a dildo. But
No,
Mass
it certainly
Effect
doesn't.
does, and the cast of Mass Effect does. And that just speaks to the quality of Mass Effect, in my opinion.
I agree.
Same.
The crafty hedonist doesn't only do Mass Effect. There are others. There's fantasy boyfriend toys,
Uh-huh.
one of which being the Iron Bull. So that's inspired by Iron Bull from Dragon Age Inquisition.
Mm-hmm.
There's one called the Amphibian Man. Who is this inspired by? Oh, this is inspired by Shape of Water.
There you go.
Wow.
So
I'm
all sorts
sensing
of
like
things.
the Venn diagram here is starting to overlap more and more.
And more.
You know?
But we will definitely put a link to this in the show description in case you want to get one of your very own.
Yeah.
Yes.
Please
This
get
is-
one.
I have been screaming about it for like 3 days now. I am
We
just
know.
so happy that I found
Yes,
this.
we've
This
seen your
is
tweets.
amazing. I was just so excited. There's one inspired by Venom.
Of course there is. That's not a stretch, though. I mean, he's practically a tentacle monster from a hentai anyway, so, like...
I'm sending it to the group chat right now.
And not going to read the Venom comic I was planning on reading.
Oh, good Lord.
Look at it.
But yeah, I think that in all honesty, sharing a sex positive a place where you can live out fantasies based on characters you're really close to, I think is really awesome. And the fact that this stuff exists is always really awesome. Like, there's still a part of me that, you know, blushes a bright red looking at this stuff, but I still think it's really awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's still kind of intense because they're intense toys. They're not for the faint of heart, and they are probably also not for beginners.
Probably, yes.
But still, it's really cool.
I concur.
Yeah. The other thing I had was about perfume, so
Yes.
that's a thing too. We can talk about it next time.
We'll talk about it next time. I also may have my own fandom corner for the second time ever on the history of the show.
Gasp!
But more about that next week.
Shock! Awe!
But we actually
Confusion.
have some in real time provided reviews from the internet. As we always say, if you like and subscribe and write a review, we will read it on the show, because ultimately this show is about sharing the experience with all of you. And I had the absolute pleasure of befriending two hosts of a podcast called Games Gone. It's Games Gone Pod on what is? Sorry, we have notes being updated in real time, and I'm distracted.
Don't pay attention to me.
So I met
My
Matt.
phone's dying.
I've become friends with two podcasters who are brothers who are talking about games gone that have come from their memories and their personal experience. And they do the first 3 weeks of every month, they do a 3-part series focused on one game. And then they've done some other variants as well. And it's a great podcast. I've been listening to it. I just listened to their Diablo 3 episodes. They're great. But one of the hosts, who's Matter of Larry on Twitter, wrote us a review, and I'm going to read it now.
Thanks for the
You're
build-up.
welcome. Mass Effect Deep Dive is the title of the review with 5 stars. I like to think we're a 5-star podcast. I'm so happy I stumbled across this lovely podcast through Twitter. The chemistry between the hosts and the level at which they dive into Mass Effect is a wonderful new take for a podcast. If you like Mass Effect, you need to be subscribed. Thank you, Larry. It's been really great interacting with you on Twitter this week. I've truly become a fan of the podcasts. So thank you for those kind words, and please continue to listen. I hope you are enjoying it.
We have another review that came in on Apple Podcasts. This is the first Spectre level podcast out there. Great job appreciating and breaking down the series. And that comes from Sebastian with a bunch of numbers after his name. Why? I cannot read all of those numbers. It's like a bunch of 3s and 4s and 7s. I can't. But
Look,
thank
Sebastian's
you
a common
so
name.
much.
I bet
You're
this guy's been
wonderful.
struggling his entire life with the usernames online.
Well, actually, we know this Sebastian. This is Sebastian from
I
Hidden
know
Pixels.
we do. That's why I'm teasing.
yes, yeah. He has his own podcast. Yep.
Yep. So thank you, Sebastian, for your kind words about the podcast as well. And thank you for annoying my co-host with lots of numbers.
Sebastian, you're very sweet. And I also saw that you reviewed my other podcasts, and I love you. Thank you.
Before we wrap up, of course, our next episode is going to be the last recruitment mission. We are recruiting the engineer, who you can probably guess who that is, but no spoilers. And we are doing that episode with Case Aiken of Another Pass, which is also featured on this network, on the Certain Point of View network. Case is someone who had not played Mass Effect before we started this podcast, and from listening and from talking to us, he's always had the game and just never got into it, and he started playing it, and then he blew through it and caught up to us, which I think was really great. And so I'm excited to get his perspective.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to hearing his perspective.
me too, because
I'm always curious, what is Mass Effect in 2019, right? Like, the world has changed so much. I wish I could just wipe my memory and experience it again in 2019.
Well, I experienced it again vicariously through my friend Amberly, who never played it before. And when she got to Mass Effect 2, I was like, hey, why don't you just FaceTime me in when you start the game? Don't worry about it.
nothing's gonna happen or anything. I just want to be there for you.
I'm really interested in your perspective. I care about you a lot. She was mad at me for like a week.
Oh, I'm sure. So again, we're doing the engineer with Case Aiken of Another Pass. So play that mission and come back here next week, or in 2 weeks rather, since we're every other week. Also, I want to give a big thank you to Abu for joining us from Lore Party. Thank you for doing this episode with us. It's been a delight.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much. This was fun. Let's do it again.
I know you have a bunch of new shows coming out, and you're doing a ton of stuff on Lore Party. So if you have stuff to promote and you want to share where people can find you on the internet, this is the place to do it.
Perfect. I'll be super brief, but to steal the words of Larry, some other 5-star podcasts with hosts that have great chemistry that you must absolutely subscribe to are, of course, Lore Party. That's our flagship podcast. We have over 100 episodes on Lore Party. We've covered games from Zelda to Metroid to Borderlands to obscure stuff like, what's that one game called? To the Moon, something like that. One of our guys is super into indie games, so he loves doing stuff like that. But like I said at the top of the show, we love celebrating video game storytelling, and in every episode, our hosts dive deep into the lore of a game. They break it down, they overanalyze it, and it's a lot of fun. So you can find Lore Party on any and every podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you listen. Just search for Lore Party. And then in addition to that, we have 2 other shows on our network. One is called Minigame, and that's actually a quick deep dive into a particular game that one of our producers, Michael, happens to be playing that week. So it's part gaming diary, part critical analysis. It's a short essay show. Each episode is just around 10 minutes. So if you're short on time, or if your commute is somehow blessed and only 10 minutes long, that's probably the show for you. And then our third show is actually upcoming. We announced it just this week, and it's going to be a show about the Witcher Netflix series starring Henry Cavill that's coming out later in the fall. So I'm a huge Witcher fan, and we've done numerous Witcher episodes on the main Lore Party feed. And the goal of this show, it's called Winds Howling, is going to be an episode-by-episode breakdown of Netflix's show. We're going to dive into each episode. We're going to share our insights. We're going to compare it to the source materials, the books. We're going to talk about the games and the larger world of The Witcher. So join us while you watch The Witcher TV show on Winds Howling. All of those podcasts can be found on any and every podcast platform, and you can learn more about each of those shows and find out where else you can connect with us on loreparty.com.
Awesome. I'm very excited about The Witcher one because I've been championing that series for a while, and the fact that they're doing a TV show, I'm very excited for. So I'll definitely be. I'm already subscribed, but I'll definitely be listening to that one.
Yeah, that idea's been simmering for a while, so I'm very excited that we get to finally share it with the world.
Yay! Let's see. If you like what you heard here, follow us on social media. We are at ReignitePod on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram, facebook.com/reignitepod, or you can send us an email at reignitepod@gmail.com.
As always, rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcatcher. The focus is, of course, the Apple Podcast app or Facebook for writing a review, because that helps us to get featured or seen by new people. So please go and do that. We'd be really, really appreciative.
As we mentioned, we're members of the Certain Point of View Network. Visit certainpov.com to find more nerdy podcasts, each with a unique point of view. You can also find a permanent invite link to our Discord server on the website. Come and join the conversation. And lastly, we'd like to thank Christina Spanks for our It's Okay to Be a Marshmallow t-shirt on Redbubble, featuring our favorite marshmallow, Caden Alenko. You can find...
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I ruined your outro.
It's a good line.
I'm going to say that Caden ruined your outro, because I did.
I know he's not your favorite marshmallow, but Matt loves him dearly.
It's true.
Hey, speaking of not my favorite marshmallow, Basil, chill the fuck out, my dude.
I'm not editing any of this
with
out,
the
by the
cat.
way. It's staying in. Enjoy.
Anyway, you can find more of her work at Chaos Does Art on Instagram, or commission her at c.spinks.animator@gmail.com. She does super good work. Let's see. We'd also like to thank David Boyle for designing our logo, which you can also get on a shirt through Redbubble, and Dan Bull for letting us use the Mass Effect rap for our theme music.
Yeah, Dan Bull continues to make awesome stuff. I often defer to his insane library of gaming music whenever a new game comes out. So definitely go check out all of his stuff. I want to thank Abu one more time for joining us on this episode of the podcast. It's been a real pleasure having you on.
Yeah, this was a really great conversation and reminds me of when I guested on Lore Party for the romance conversation.
Yeah, that was such a great episode. I was so upset that I missed it, but it was a great listen.
Get wrecked.
Yeah, one of our best to date. All
Anyway.
thanks to you, MJ.
Thanks.
You just bring that joy.
Join us next time where we talk about The Engineer with Case Aiken of Another Pass podcast. I'm MJ.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And I'm Abu, and we should go.
You're listening to Reignite. I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite podcast on the Citadel.